And we are now live on YouTube. So just want to quickly welcome everybody to Jesse Hunt's workshop entitled Creating Therapeutic Artifacts in a Healing Environment. So take it away, Jesse.
There we go. Is that being shown now?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, cool. Just making sure. Okay, so that's my title. I'm a recreation therapist, and I've been doing recreation therapy for about 12 years now, and mostly in mental health, and then a little bit in physical rehab. And so this is kind of where some of these concepts came from. It's gonna do that. Okay, so basically today I just want to you guys to get something out of this, and the biggest things would be just understanding what a therapeutic artifact is. It's a term I made up. You can have the other part is I want you to know that you can have an impact on other people just by sharing and developing your own personal talents. And that will in essence create a lifeline. Mm-hmm. And then you can also, the third thing is you can also create meaningful art that helps you on your own journey of self-discovery. And this is something we'll end up doing together at the end with a little activity or an exercise. Okay, so the way I came up with this idea was I worked at Loma Linda University, and it was for physical rehab. And so a lot of people were coming in for stroke, major car accidents, or anytime they lost mobility. And so I'd be part of their healing team, I guess, as the recreation therapist. And so there's one story of a woman that came in. I'm just going to call her Nancy. She came in and she told me she loved art during our assessment. But then she also told me during that assessment, I don't think I can do that anymore. And so I was like, we'll see about that. And so she was worried about it. She lost movement of her hand and no longer felt like she can use the right hand to make art. And that's a good point. But yeah, so I made it a challenge. I challenged her a little bit, like, I'll have you doing some art, okay? And we agreed to that. So we eventually did art together. The first day she was definitely nervous about it. But I just had her do like movements with her arm, not any fine detail, just movements. And that's all art is moving paint or moving a pencil. And so it was kind of a good experience for her. I think she was able to create something. And then she went back to her room. And about a few days later, her husband came up to me and he was just like, hey, I want to tell you, Nancy is so excited about that painting she did. She's talking to all the nurses about it. She's showing it off to everybody that she can still paint. And I was like, nice, like it worked. And I mean, so my imagination went with that. And I was just kind of like, how cool is that she's able to be happy about a piece of art that if I looked at, we'd be like, oh, that's not that good, quality wise. But the experience wise, it was one of the most important things to her. And I just thought more in my imagination, like, wow, she'll probably bring that painting home, put it on the wall, and talk to her grandkids about it and say, this is the first thing I did after my stroke. And so that to me was a point where it's like, whoa, like, okay, I do have moments of impact with people as a therapist, and sometimes I usually don't get to see it, but that time I, got to. So we'll get into that. The other experience I had where I also felt like this was a moment of goodness was I did that wellness art club event that I wanted to do in Reno. It was something I was planning on, and I ended up doing with just me and my wife. And we went to a park. I advertised it to people who were leaving our program and said, hey, you're welcome to come to this. It's in a month from now. And one of my past residents ended up showing up, and she came with her grandkids, her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend, and herself. And so they had fun. They made art. Just a typical day of just having fun and doing art. But then I noticed she was carrying this like big book around, a folder. And I finally asked her, like, what's this folder that you're carrying around? And she basically said, everything in this folder is the groups that we did during when I was at your program. And I made it a part of my program to always make sure that I created handouts that were hand drawn, because it felt like it was more human than just handing them a printout of what is depression or whatever. So I always made sure to hand draw my things. But it was really cool to see, like, wow, she's actually carrying around like all the things that I talked about and other people talked about. And so I was like, those were the two moments in my career where I was like, okay, there are people that are listening, and there are people that are taking your advice and maybe changing their life a little bit because of it. Because sometimes as a therapist, you don't, or at least my type of therapy, I don't get to see the end result. I just am there as a fixture. We have some fun, and then they go somewhere else, go to home usually. So that's how I came up with the therapeutic artifact idea, is like, hey, the things that I'm doing as a therapist will have a lifelong story for these people sometimes, to be real. So that's something I want you to think about if you're a therapist, or if you're even in your own life. Those aha moments where you start connecting the dots are important. So that was something important to me. And then, from that, I just felt like you can make an impact on other people's lives by just being you and just doing what you love and enjoy. Because I love art. I love to be different. So I draw all my handouts, because that was just weird. Like, it saves paper. I mean, it's just easier. Like, it's a way that I can brainstorm my lesson plan beforehand, and it ended up turning into something that's kind of keepable. So just be you, and people usually will appreciate it. This is blocking a little bit. Showing others what you're passionate about is important. When you're living your passion, it models a positive lifestyle. And so that, as a recreation therapist, that's a huge thing. It's like, if I don't have any hobbies, how can I tell other people to have hobbies? Or if I don't have a positive lifestyle, then who am I to go preach or teach that you should have one? And so that's kind of always a background motivation for somebody in a helping career, is that hopefully we're modeling a little bit of that positive lifestyle. But that's a good thing for kids or parents, is that as your kids can see that you have hobbies that are important to you, then that also teaches them that they can have hobbies that are important to them. And so, and you're practicing still. That's also, my daughter thinks that if she does something one time, she's like really good at it. And I'm like, babe, you have to like practice forever. Like, I still watch YouTube videos on how to do art better. And so just encouraging that growth. Oops. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about what a traditional artifact is, and then the therapeutic one. So a traditional, like, archaeological artifact is anything created by humans that gives information about the culture of its creator and or users. The thing we leave behind that gives us significance. They are also the tools we use to make something. Artifacts can be part of the way we interpret the world. And then the therapeutic artifact, this is kind of lengthy, but something I made up. So a therapeutic artifact is something which is created by humans at moments of connectedness. These are the things and experiences that tell our personal stories and leave an impact on our lives. They are the tools we use, the things we talk about with our significant others in our lives. These are our lived experiences. These are the stories that are passed on to family and friends and friend relationships. The physical reminders of what we have made and how we have lived. So it's kind of like what we've already been doing all day long. Like each one of those things, we were telling our personal stories that left an impact on our lives. And that to me is art is leaving or creating those therapeutic artifacts. It can be other things. It can be a handout, like I said. It's something that impacted somebody and they wanted to keep it. And so that's kind of collections could be, if you use them as a therapeutic thing, that can be an artifact, I guess. And so just remembering those two stories that's kind of what a therapeutic artifact is to me. And yeah, so we can have those connections. I don't know. I put a bunch of questions that might help you determine if it's an artifact. If you want a copy of this, just let me know. I can send you the whole slideshow. And if anybody has any questions right now, I can probably slow down and ask that. And I don't really have the chat, but if you put in the chat, then somebody will tell me about it. But there's a bunch of questions that help determine if it's an artifact. Does it create a positive memory? Does it lead to self-development? Is it meaningful to me? Is it a practice that is easy to adopt or start or do on a daily? Could you share or teach this to somebody else? Could you see yourself doing this often? Did I utilize my personal passion in creating this activity or this artifact? Does it plant a seed with somebody else? We talked about seeds quite a few times today, and I'm going to go into that part next as well. Okay, so I believe that we are everybody. If you're a parent, an aunt, an employee, a manager, we all have this role as a seed planter or an idea spreader. Your role as a seed planter. So I tell my staff all the time that I don't really have control over what somebody does with their life. But I do have the control over what I can teach them. And so and the power that I bring behind that, I guess, is the best I can try. And so I'll get to that again. I'll just read this though. So I see your talents, the things that you're naturally good at, or the things you developed are your seeds. So I have heard this quote, what is sown inside of you is to be sown by you. So we all have some natural gifts. Sometimes we have developed gifts, and those are what we can sow in the world. What is it that you feel compelled to share with the world is a good question to ask when we're coming to the end of this symposium. Is like, what is it that I feel compelled to share or create with the world? Or how can I add to this art in the community kind of thing? What seed do you have right now that can be planted? That's a good question to think about. What can I start planting right now? We had some moments today where we shared some of our goals. And so those are probably the ones. So the point I have found in working in a harsh environment like mental health is I can only plant seeds every day. The rest is up to the person whom the seeds were given. I cannot make choices for other people, and I have to teach myself and my staff sometimes that, like, you're going to be disappointed if you think they're just going to change from one lesson or a series of lessons. It's going to have to come down to maybe that seed growing inside of them, and then, oh, I want to change. I want to do that. And so we're kind of more inspirational at times for mental health. Okay. All right. So I don't know where we're at because I did not start my timer, but I'll look at the time. 3:15. Okay. So we're going to get into that.
You're doing fine. You have 30 minutes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I want some time to share at the end. So cool. Okay. So this is getting into the activity. I'm going to try maybe we'll just leave it at this. I had an overhead camera. It's not working. So what will you need for this activity? I hope you guys have just a piece of paper. I'm saying 2 or 3 pieces. If you're trying to draw on a sketchbook or something, then save that sketchbook, and then 2 pages will be for like writing. You'll just need a pencil, a Sharpie marker, a ruler, an eraser, and then maybe a found object or an image to draw from. I'm using these little scissors that I found, and it says ACT, which means activities. I must have taken it from work for this activity. So yeah, I'll bring them back. But that's what I'm going to draw from. I'm just going to put the scissors on my desk or whatever found object you can find. It can be your car keys. It can be the pen you're using. It can be anything. It can be random, but you'll have some kind of connection to it. after this process. So we'll give you a minute to find that. If you guys have it, then let me know. Thumbs up. All right. Couple. This part's always hard for me, is to figure out what little found object do I want to use. Or sometimes I'll use an icon that I identify with. If I'm trying to do a more artistic piece, I'll pick like a buffalo or something random, and then, but it's something I'm interested in. So this can go two ways. It can be a journal, and it can also be like lead to an artistic piece. So that's my slant. All right. Before we start, I always tell my staff that there's going to be a part of the art that's like messy and ugly. And that's the part where you don't want people to look at it because they'll judge it. And somebody was drawing yesterday at work, and all of her lines are covered in paint. And I'm like, don't worry, it's going to be nice as soon as you make those lines black again. And she's like, oh, okay. Because she was I can tell she was worried. So art is messy, creativity is messy, and there's always a stage where you'll hate it. Sticking with it produces a positive experience. So hopefully this isn't too messy of an idea today, but it's something I just made up recently in my own life. And so I'm still trying to figure out how to teach it correctly. So just bear with me. Okay, so we're starting. Okay, so first step is you're going to get a piece of paper. And I have a little piece of wood that I cheat with, but I have a piece of square wood because I like to make art in square. So, but what you can do on your paper is just make a square. I know you probably don't have, if you have a ruler, that's great. If not, make it a sloppy square with sloppy edges. It doesn't matter. It's just to frame it out a little bit and to give you focus. So in this part, you're just going to draw your object. Like you can see on the PowerPoint, don't draw the frog, but that's just an example of that. Draw your frog or your stapler or whatever you're drawing, your scissors in that square. You can probably trace it if you really want to, like if you have a fear that you're not going to be able to draw it, but I would say draw it and add some shading to it, make it look like an actual drawing, but in your style. So it could be painted, it can be whatever. And so that's first stage, is just draw your found object. We'll give you 5 minutes for that. Let me find the music if I can. That's the part I don't get. Can you guys hear that music? No? Okay. I will find a way. Sure. You have about 5 minutes to draw. So. All right, you have a couple minutes. Have about 30 seconds. I'm sorry. Okay. Can everybody still hear me? I switched cameras, so
Yeah, we can still hear you.
perfect. Okay, so I drew this a little bit beforehand. So if you're not quite done drawing, it's always okay to go back to your drawing later. But now, the next stage, let me switch screens one more time. Let's go back to here. Sure. So you have your image drawn, basically. I did not change. Let me just go to this. The next part of this, you're going to do a little bit of linking of words to that object, almost like a little mind map, where just any kind of past experiences that relate to that object, or even just words that you can riff off of that object. And I'll give you an example of mine. I put scissors, cut ties, change, clippings, craft, crafting life. So my brain was just having fun with some words that I can play off of my object. It could always go to a memory that you have of scissors or whatever. And so you're going to be writing on a separate piece of paper that little mind map and the word association. And then also after that, think of like a few things that might be bothering you or that are coming up in your life that are you're dealing with. It could even be current news events, like I put like the Ukrainian war, it's bothering me. And so like that's something that I can maybe write about in a few minutes. And so I'll give you guys a few minutes to, I think, make sure this is right. Yeah, so we'll just do that for a few minutes, write down some word associations, and then one thing that might be on your mind right now that you might be able to solve through this object. I'll give you a few minutes. Maybe 1 more minute for that. Okay. Just, we'll move slowly on to the next thing, just so we don't run out of time. The next part is you have a little bit of those word associations and things that happen. Now you're gonna start riffing your thoughts. Like riffing is like in jazz or blues, where you just start letting yourself free associate based on those things you wrote down. And for scissors, cut ties, change, that's what I wrote. That's going to go into, some of those words might go into a little bit of free association writing. And it's almost not poetic, but just free thought. Just let it go and write it down. And this helps you discover a little bit of your personal philosophy, where you're trying to maybe through this object, maybe solve some of the things that are challenging you right now. If you're feeling sad about the Ukrainian war, then maybe a piece of this can tie into that or something. So I'm kind of saying be like a philosopher and solve some problems as it relates to that object with the thing that's challenging you. Whoops. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the next 5 minutes. I'll try to find some music again this time. Once again. about 1 minute. Stop there. Okay, so yeah, that part you just do a little free associated in writing. You might have filled a page. I filled a little bit. I always tend to like go straight into just trying to make one quick poem-ish kind of thing. And so it kind of like slips. Oh my gosh, it's hard to do. It's like that. I don't know if everything's backwards or upside down, but and it's just, I'll give you a few lines from mine. Scissors are a funny thing, splitting up what once was together. Scissors' greatest friend is glue, our innate desires to put things, broken things, back together. And so like, I'll finish that because the last line kind of doesn't work. But so it kind of started me off on, it starts me off on this little poem slash spoken word kind of thing that now I have something to put on the back of that image, on that image that we just drew. Let me see if I can change this back. I'll show you what I mean. Actually, I'll just show you a sample piece that's already done. So now you're gonna actually let me get rid of that. Oh, it's all backwards. I don't know why. So now that you have the image of something, this is one I did before. I did a paintbrush, and then I just did the free writing. Now I'm gonna just pencil some of the things that I like best from what we just did onto the back of this, and I'm just gonna write it in my own style of font and just try to fill it up. You can use big words or small words, and the goal is to fill up the square with words that you just wrote. And you can ad lib or edit a little bit right now, but that's kind of the last 5 minutes is to get that on the back of it. You can use a Sharpie, or I usually do it in pencil first and then Sharpie it. And so I'll give you a few minutes. I know you might not be able to finish, but traditionally it ends with it in big, bold letters. And then you got this art piece that you could turn into a painting or something else, but it also has a piece of your heart on it. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes for that. Sure. Few minutes. Ooh, just a little bit longer. You'll probably only have time for the pencil part. Oops. Shop for my sorry. Okay. Let me switch back. Just try to wrap up whatever you're doing. Okay. Okay, so this does take a little bit more longer at the end to finish the write-up, but you can see that I have my penciled words. They're kind of sloppy, but once I put them in Sharpie, I kind of finalize the look of it. And I just shortened that poem just to the stuff that I read out loud to you guys. So it's all a little bit backwards, but scissors are a funny thing. You know, I just put that and I filled and made some bigger and some smaller. And it ends up being more artistic, but also it gives me an image that has a little bit more meaning, whereas scissors had zero meaning beforehand. Besides they cut stuff. But now scissors are reminding me that, you know, sometimes people's lives have to be, like we said earlier in the analogy of making paper, sometimes you have to chop it up and redo it in order to make something else out of it. Usually scissors are always used to make something cool, like a craft or a clothing or whatever. And so now scissors have meaning to me. And so it's an essence of just a little way of making meaningless objects have a little bit more meaning to you. Or for us to have a little bit of thinking about life behind, or what we can learn from a pair of scissors or whatever. So I don't know if you guys got that far into it. It's kind of a rush process, but I'd probably take at least 30 minutes to do one of these on a regular basis. And I've been doing it now for a couple months, where I do an image and then kind of free associate right on it and see what kind of wisdom comes out of there. Does anyone want to share theirs? I know it's kind of sudden. We should have shared all the way through, but we didn't have that much time. Is anybody willing to share? And if you do, just unmute yourself and go for it.
I'll share. So, it's a pencil.
Oh, cool.
It's
Realistic.
one that I made.
Oh, wow.
I do wood turning, so it's a pencil. It's my art pencil.
Okay.
And so I have shadows, communication, art, journaling, togetherness, find the core to solve the real issues.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I drew my wedding rings.
Oh,
And let's see, what I ended up with is rings are a circle. Maybe it's a cycle, and the world is on the darker side, inside the tunnel, looking for the light, trying to find our way out, our way towards something better, stronger, real.
nice. I'll
Yeah.
share mine. Let's
Thank
see.
you. Wow.
I have this beautiful malachite stone. I'm kind of a stone person. So I said, power and connecting to earth and our treasures, find solace, speak to the stones. They speak back and guide you. Wisdom, resonant, mystic stone magic.
Yeah, I love that. Just how you're riffing off of the stone and just having a fun time with it.
Yeah.
Here's mine.
Wow.
You see?
That's good shadowing. I like that. Really, I like the incorporation of the words with the art, even though sometimes we traditionally don't do that.
Yeah, it was about, for me, I'm kind of in a hurry to get to October, and I'm just reminding myself that that the harvest can't come unless you give things time to grow first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my object was this seed pod from my garden
Oh, cool.
that my cat just heard. Ah!
Yeah. It sounds like a toy.
Okay, we're gonna put that out of his reach.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We are almost out of time, but I don't know. I guess we'll just wrap it up. But yeah, I hope that this provided some kind of value, that you can see that those little things are now almost artifacts in our life. The scissors, though once silly looking, are now, wow, that's going to remind me that scissors have a friend called glue, and that's how we make cool things. And seeds are ready to grow at any time, but they have to wait for their season. And you guys, thank you for participating, and I hope that you can just remember that the impact you have in life is by the seeds you plant and by the things you make with people or with yourself, and that, you know, people will remember that. If you have any questions, I don't know how much time we have. I think we're supposed to end right now, but I'll probably be at the Q&A. I might be at a family gathering, but I'll probably tune in and I'll be there for that.
Okay. Yeah. So we just have one more conversation on our website, and then we have the meet and greet. So yeah, Jesse, if you can make it to that, but also Jesse's contact information is in the workbook, and you can always reach out to us if you're looking to connect with Jesse. And thank you so much
Thank you.
for presenting this. It's I got more out of it than I thought I would. And it was just very surprising what I could draw from something. So thank you for introducing me to that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been surprising for me too. I'm like,
Yeah.
I did one on buffaloes, and I started talking about just different political things. I was like, wow, I didn't know that I was worried about the Native Americans like that. And
Yeah.
something came out where it's like, wow, I do care about them a lot, because where I grew up in Arizona, it's like we're around that culture. Yep. And so I honor it. But yeah, it just gives you surprises when you do things like that.
It's like
posting this as well.
Yeah.
It's like art takes you out of the way, and it's almost like you can download those automatic riffing thoughts. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I hope you can make it to the meet and greet, which starts at, let's see, 4:45. Just use the same link, and we'll all be ready to chat and connect and to kind of digest what happened. You know, it was a super powerful day. So thank you for taking a part of it and riding along with us. And we look forward to celebrating with you in just a little while after our next conversation.